very few people actually finish their life well. So I think you have to start with some of the staggering realities of this is, again, up against an enemy who comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
Lots of people are hurt. I probably have at least one conversation a week with someone who will say, church hurt.
At times we get so busy in trying to execute God's plan, what we are calling God's plan, we're letting that superimpose as our priority and take us away from the actual character work of just being with Jesus and letting him change us and transform us.
Welcome to the Follow-Up Podcast, a podcast that believes at its core the single most important oriented belief that if Jesus was right about God and life and the human soul, then it would make sense that we rearrange our lives around what he said is true. So that's what we're exploring. All that Jesus said was true and how to rearrange our lives around it. Hey, I'm so glad you guys are here. And today I'm excited because we've got a guest on our podcast, Michele Cushatt.
Try again.
Cushatt.
There you go.
Cushatt. Michelle's been on the podcast.
I'm going to have to keep coming back until you get it right.
I know. I'm going to get it right. I will get it right.
We've only been friends for I don't know, 2 or 3 years now.
This is a great story, though, because I think this story is worth telling because Michele is not only gifted author, speaker, pastor, but she attends the church that I attend. Yeah, Plum Creek Church.
Lucky me.
But we did not know each other, and the way we got to know each other was this man right here.
Yes, correct.
And you had her on your podcast, right?
Yep. And I was like, she lives in Castle Rock, and I
was like guest speaking at the time.
It was like a throwaway interaction at the end of our recording right before we hung up.
Right.
Like it was the last 2 minutes.
And then I was like, hey, one of the smartest people I know actually goes to the church you're teaching at. You need to hang out with her. And then I think you guys connected one Saturday.
You sent me her, and I'm just sort of like dumb enough to text whoever Carter sends me their number. I'm like, okay.
Some strange guy just texted me.
I know. It's like,
okay.
Hey, you know my friend Steve. We should hang out. But this is a good example for real of how the Lord works, because you had
100%.
been attending Plum Creek
for 2 to 3 years,
sort of sitting in the back.
Anonymity. Yeah. I'd come every single weekend. Our family is real faithful. We're there all the time. Had started attending right after COVID because we had moved down to Castle Rock, and had been just attending, but very much anonymous, not connected. And I had been really comfortable that way, except that I had felt God starting to move me toward re-engaging. And there's a whole story behind my church journey and ministry and everything. But I knew God was moving, but I was reluctant because it's risky to be known. Right? And to be seen and known and connected, especially in a local context. Where would I go if it didn't work out?
Right.
Yeah.
And so there was just a real tension. And so God decided to make it abundantly easy for me by this conversation with Steve and that connection. And I mean, for the last 2 years, God's kindness and allowing me to re-engage in a local church community in baby steps to just slowly heal some things from the past. I mean, that's just God's kindness.
To hear you say that your engagement has been baby steps to me is like, wait a minute.
Well, for me, just layers
I get it.
And like, because if you only knew how many times my fear and just I hope this encourages somebody listening. The risk of being seen and known within the context of a Christian community is legit, right? Yep. And that's why a lot of people attend and never get connected. And yet, God doesn't want to leave us there. And so he's been so kind to just not let me stay back and allow me to take steps and then heal me at the same time before I'm tempted to run away and flee.
We did... Michele now speaks regularly at the church. She co-authored the Follow Guide, executive produced the Prayer Guide. We have another one coming out. Well, we'll have more coming out in the future. She's deeply involved. And so,
and it's a privilege. I mean, truly
it is
a privilege.
a privilege. Your voice in the project has been just so profound and wonderful. Here's where I'd love to take us today. A little bit different. And if you're not a pastor, I do believe that this episode will speak to you as well. But I thought we might have a conversation around Christian leadership. What does that look like in the evangelical church? Steve and I would say Michele as well, spent our whole life in the evangelical church, active in the evangelical space as well. Sometimes there has been a race to outcomes. We talked about this recently, that ignores or allows for character deficiencies to be put on a back burner. Because here's what I believe to be true. I don't think anybody just wakes up one day and then craters their life, right? Doesn't really work that way. Now, it works in practice that way because whatever that thing is gets made public. But that's like the iceberg above the water. There's years and years and years. And so part of what I want to talk about is this process in Christian leadership of becoming, and how important it is that at the highest level, we as pastors are pursuing becoming. Like, we are being formed, not just speaking about it, not utilize our gifting, but that we are serious about formation at the highest levels. Because, I think, I'll tell you my opinion, it's a failure of formation, right? When you see a ministry blow up or a pastor morally fail, it doesn't happen. It's a long, slow sort of process. So I'd love to just sort of dive into that and talk a little bit about that today, your experience with it, and just the importance of us as pastors making sure not only we cultivate our own inner lives, but that we're not platforming people too quickly, that we are creating systems, processes, even though I'm not a process guy, but we're expectations, that formation is a non-negotiable, that we really are not perfect, but that we're being formed.
It's not only not optional, it's like the thing.
Yeah.
Like, it goes back to, what would it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his very self? Like, this is the whole thing. John 17, this is eternal life, that you would know God and his son whom he sent. Like, this is it. And so at times we get so busy in trying to execute God's plan, what we are calling God's plan.
Yeah.
We're letting that superimpose as our priority and take us away from the actual character work of just being with Jesus and letting him change us and transform us.
Yeah, I feel that.
A guy by the name of Bobby Clinton, who is a leadership professor at Fuller Seminary, he wrote, and he said that studying the Bible, only 33% of the people finish well. And then he kind of charted that out in politics and in faith. And he said, very few people actually finish their life well. So I think you have to start with some of the staggering realities of this. Isn't like, everyone gets to the end of their life and it's like, well done, good and faithful servant.
Go.
Like,
yeah, right.
this is again up against an enemy who comes to steal, kill, and destroy. 33%.
Okay, can we just pause? That's staggering and heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking.
As someone who knows that I could easily, I know my own culpability and how easily I could make a series of decisions to land me in that 33%.
Exactly. And so
how do we not do that?
Yeah. And so you hold that with that reality. The same thing is, I want to give a lot of people the benefit of the doubt. They jump into ministry with really, really good intention.
Yeah, totally.
God is somehow using this ability when I play G and D and E minor and C and like and God is using this ability that I have a connection with students, or when I open up God's word, or whatever that might be. But something happens because the church is connected to this evangelical industrial complex. And none of this is bad in itself. I'm just saying this is how it starts to happen, how the system begins to happen, is you start to grow and people start to show up, and then all of a sudden you can't fit in the same building. So you need a bigger space. So in the bigger space makes total sense, and the best purest motives in that. Well, now the bank is going to you're going to take out a loan with the bank, and the bank's going to ask this one simple question: who's the key man? Well, the key man's the person who's opening up God's word. Without even knowing it, what that does is it shifts a whole bunch of power to this one person, that all of a sudden there's a pressure for a mortgage to be paid, for
seats to be filled.
We've got to actually do this in a way. Like I can't be a prophet because I might lose this. So all of a sudden having to like navigate that part, while also being called the key man, is also lending you to be the narcissistic power broker. So again, none of it's bad in itself, but if you don't have the right checks and balances in place, all of a sudden, well, that's what Pastor said. That's what we're doing. And 90% of it's really, really good. The 10% we can dismiss because we don't want to have to carry that note without Pastor, or we don't want to have to, like, it's like human nature to want to see the good and want to be on the right side of history. And so I don't want to bring up a question of maybe a 2% drift in a character deficiency, because then it might seem like I'm discounting all the good.
They're only human.
And you just start to kind of like,
we use the word grace. We just need to have grace and have compassion, or we need to.
Yes. And it's just little by little.
Like 2% over the course of years and decades.
Right. You're not going to land in Phoenix if you fly from Denver. You're going to land in Yuma or somewhere else, And I think recognizing capital campaigns, they're not bad. They're really, really good. I mean, you guys are in one right now, which is awesome. That's amazing. Having a spiritual gift, not bad. That's amazing. Watching people come to faith and a church is growing, not bad. It's amazing. But all of that doesn't mean it's perfect. Because sometimes the adage is, well, healthy things grow. Well, so does cancer.
Yep.
And so like, and so part of it is recognizing how as an organization and as a leader am I walking honestly and vulnerably to recognize I'm as susceptible.
You called it what did you call it? The industrial complex, the evangelical church industrial complex. For real, like, we're not making this up. There are headlines that hit on a regular basis around very high, effective pastors who have fallen. They have fallen. I mean, that's really what we're talking about. When we say finishing well, I mean, it's not code. It's like, I mean, it really rocked me when Ravi Zacharias fell. Like, that rocked me, because here's a guy for me that I'm like, there are going to be some people who might not finish well, but probably not that person. And I'm not trying to point out any particular person. I'm just saying that this happens regularly. This isn't like, it doesn't feel like one-offs. So how is it that this happens so regularly?
There's so many, and I think it's dependent on the context and dependent on the person, dependent on the organization. Um, and I think deep down there's a piece of pace. I think you can get yourself into a pace of you are working, um, pushing, and what got you into ministry, the motivation changes. Motivation moves from souls to maybe influence.
Yeah.
It moves from pace to almost where you've become a victim of your own life.
Wow.
I just have to do this, and I got to keep these people happy, and I got to do this, and I got to, and to the verse that you quoted from Matthew, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world yet profit their soul? You can find little shortcuts. That's why I love the cadet's prayer. Every cadet at West Point, my grandfather's buried there, was a multi-star general. They had to memorize this prayer. And it says, let us live above the common level of life. Let us choose the harder right over the lesser wrong. And I think that sometimes you get to this moment of, if I work at Chase Bank and I'm a branch manager, I might be a Christ follower, but my first and primary job and profession is a branch manager at Chase Bank. No shade on that. That's a great job. If I'm a pastor, even though I'm just as human as the branch manager, I somehow, in the voice of God as a mouthpiece, now I'm the person who married the elders, family. I baptized the elders' kids. I've been there in significant moments of high highs, low lows, taught, and all of a sudden, like, that's my guy. That's my favorite preacher. She's amazing. Like, all of a sudden, it's hard because God now has been attached to this, that I think is both fair and unfair. But it is a pressure
It's
at
reality.
which it's reality. It is a pressure at which, and so I remember there was one pastor came up to me and said, "You're going to have to wrestle with," and it was a little antiquated for me personally, but he just said, "You're going to have to wrestle with what your relationship is with girls, gold, and glory." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "I'm telling you, because that's the way most men who don't end well and don't finish well. It's somewhere around the glory. It becomes all about them and their influence and their ambition and their pride, and it takes them down. It becomes about the resourcing, the money. It becomes everything about their life, and they need more and more and more, or it becomes some kind of sexual escape." And so I think that there's more G's that you can add to this, but like, I think that you have to wrestle with, where are you susceptible? Where in your story, you take any of the names and add my name to that list and go, we all come from some family system, and that family system taught us something, and none of us showed up into ministry as someone who has arrived or perfect. We are all in process, but are we doing our work? And are we actually allowing ourselves, so like right now, to be honest, the church I'm at, Christ Church, our kind of like trustees, which would be our elders, they're like meeting with a couple of like pastors to try and help say, how do we save Steve from Steve, and how do we protect the organization from Steve, and how do we protect Steve from the organization? How do you have those conversations and create healthy guardrails, but also knowing every system can be gamified?
Well,
Everyone.
I mean, here's the thing. It's funny that you talked about the system that you guys are implementing, right? because sometimes when I think about, and I want to say this from the beginning, that but for the grace of God, you know,
100%.
right? But for the grace of God.
You know how many times God has saved me from myself?
It's a pretty consistent thing. And we teach this in our house. I said, look, you're not always going to get it right, but you can make it right. So we're not talking about perfection, but we've watched this happen enough that it's not a surprise. And I want to recognize, like, there will be people who are sitting on the other side of this, and it is exceedingly painful, and it has disrupted their life, and they didn't have anything to do with it, right? It completely wrecked them. And so, and many of the people who have fallen or not finished well, they did not start off
Nobody goes
as
into this
right?
planning to do
You
that,
don't plan
right?
to
You
do
don't
it.
plan,
But it makes me
but it
think,
happens.
it happens. It makes me think that sometimes I wonder if we've created a structure that makes it easier for good people to fail. For instance, the platform. We know that your giftedness in the platform, if you're gifted preacher, that expedites a ton. You want to talk about a microwave. You can be platformed quickly if you are gifted, right? The platform.
Terrifying.
It is. It is. And then I think about the isolation. We've formed these pastoral systems of, whether we like it or not, in these larger apparatus of easy isolation, green rooms and pastoral staff that does things like burials and weddings and hospital visits. And then we have to own some of this as the people. Adulation. We like
Of course.
We like our pastors to be important. We put them in these places. And I wonder sometimes, and that's why I love to hear what you guys are doing, is like, have we not sometimes built structures that actually, look, you still have to do the bad thing. You still have to do the bad thing. But do these systems of platform and isolation and adulation need to be addressed as systemic issues that, look, if you're isolated, it makes it easier to fall. If you sit at the top of this thing and you're the king man, it makes it easier to lie to yourself. If you have a platform presence, it makes it easier to justify because you can say, no, look at all the good that I'm doing. Look at all the good that I'm doing. So, and I'll get it under control. I'll figure this out. So I think when we talk about, making it plain, I think there is something as pastors to say, trust and verify. It's like, let's build systems that,
when's the last time you heard someone confess in the church from leadership and it actually be done well and that person wasn't canceled or fired? I can count on my hand a lot quicker the moments where people kept secrets and hid and were found out than I can the example of someone who said,
confession.
Yep. Hey, I'm
Proactive.
I'm wrestling with this, and was either sidelined well, or that was brought and handled well, or wasn't shamed and kicked to the curb, because we don't want our pastors to have their act together, even though we know everyone's on a journey. I think it's this hard spot of what does actual vulnerability and truth and transparency look like? Well, every weekend I get done and I walk to my car, I say I'm one weekend closer to finishing well. I have 52 weekends in a year. If I'm doing this for the next 20 years, that's 1,040 weekends that I have to go. And it's like, and being really, really honest, with, like, to what Michelle was saying, is to know where I'm susceptible. But when I was hired at Willow, as the lead teaching pastor, I asked the elders this simple question: how do I know I'll do well? And they gave me a document. And the document was all outcomes based. And I said, I could do all of this and be dying inside and you wouldn't know. How do you like, and everything was up and to the right. More baptisms, more attendance, financially hitting our goals, all important good stuff. But there was no question about the soul. There was no like, we would love to talk to your therapist. Who's your small group? Who's your best friend? Who knows exactly? How's your marriage? Here's what we want to invest in your well-being as a person. There was none of that. It's just so easy to move it to a hired gun. And again, no shade on a worship pastor. But I can play the same 27 songs in a 6-month period and keep doing Reckless Love, which is a great song, or this song or that song or Promises or whatever it is. Every week it's a different talk. Every week it's different stories. Every week it's a different chance to plagiarize, to exaggerate, to boom, 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 boom. All this stuff.
All those pitfalls, right?
All these pitfalls. While at the same time dealing with a family who just had a person die by suicide, another person die by accidental death, a family member who died with cancer. At the same time, marriage, hospital visits, like the emotional weight of it all.
It's massive.
And being up in front. And so to your system structure piece, sometimes I look at it and go, man, 33% is actually really good odds. You know what I mean? Like it's like right? with what we've created, and at the same time, it breaks my heart.
Well, both of you kind of hinted at something too, that it's really a two-part problem or a two-part thing. We have the, for the pastor, the leader, I'm going to say leader themselves, their own issues and susceptibilities and things like that. But then also the community congregational expectation and the way they view the role. All right. So go back to Saul being instituted as king. The people wanted a king like all the other nations. Right? They wanted Saul to be their king, and it wasn't because they were following in God's direction. They were literally rejecting a theocratic style of government for a kingship like everybody else around them. And that was as much the community's problem as it was Saul's problem. When Saul ended up failing, it was the responsibility on both halves, because the expectation was not what it needed to be, and then his execution was not what it was needed to be. So the only way we can really start to heal this is to address both by really, I guess, going back to the drawing board of what does it look like to be a pastor, and how do we communicate this to our congregations as well?
I think one of the ways, and I've been trying, because I think it is such a great image, is starting to look at going, because any system can be gamified, but what are some healthy principles that I think relieve the pressure on a Saul? I think one of them is a preaching team.
Yes.
If you have a preaching team, that means you don't have to always be on stage. Like, are there moments where you're not the smartest person in the room, or you're not the one with the final word every time? Like, there are these pieces. Are there rules? Like, Chuck DeGroat wrote this great book called When Narcissism Comes to Church, and he's brilliant. And
I've heard of that book.
And he said, Steve, you have to imagine, this is how easy it is for you to be a narcissist. I said, okay, tell me. He goes, have you ever gotten your slides in late? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, that means the entire organization, the tech team, the production team has to wait. And if you send them on Saturday, they aren't to be able to be with their family or Sabbath. They are waiting for you to get your slides in. And they only do that because you've said that that's okay. And they're waiting on you. And that's just a small piece. But if that happens, then why can't this happen? And why can't this happen? And why can't this happen? And then
so where does the power dynamic rest?
Exactly.
Right? It's all right there.
It's all right there. And so for from that moment on, I was like, oh my gosh, this changes everything. Because again, the natural tide isn't going to be health and well-being and soul care and formation. It's going to be drifting to, especially when you're in the top few seats, everything that power dynamic.
That ties in that whole concept of shalom, that the shalom of the individual is directly tied to shalom of the community.
Yes.
And when we as leaders start to think that our shalom is the only shalom that matters, we are missing the actual definition of God's shalom.
Yes.
It's about the community as a whole, which quite honestly has no room for this whole celebrity pastor kind of mindset. Like there's just no room within the shalom dynamic for that.
Why then though do we continue to see this dynamic at play? And I'm not trying to call out celebrity pastors or whatever that is, but there is a dynamic where the system immediately recognizes and incentivizes great preachers, people who can speak God's word, right? Great preachers. And then we put them into a little isolated box and we add, we're like, they're the greatest thing that's ever happened. I just think, and some of these pastors are really, really young, like really young.
I think part of it is we value charisma over character. Right. I mean, and I say this as a congregation member. We are so drawn, and some of this is our culture and everything else, Hollywood. We are so drawn to charisma and energy and something that we aspire to. And so that charisma ends up being more of a driving factor than actual character.
Yeah. It's a difficult one, right? Because in some sense, there are incredibly gifted people. David was incredibly gifted.
Yeah.
Solomon was incredibly gifted. Paul was incredibly gifted. Like Peter was incredibly gifted. Like you start to look at that. I think it becomes, do you have the character to match that gift? And again, if the phrase that we would often talk about is a cruciform life. If you are, Jesus like got down on his knees and he washes the feet of his disciples. So it's not about the greatest preacher. It should be about the servant leader. Is this person a servant leader, or is this person really just a hireling with a gift? Like we just hired this gift. He's just he or she's just like a hired gun. But if you think about the organization, when this person, do they walk by the facilities person? Do they know them? When chairs need to be set up or taken down, is their role too busy? Like, do they have margin in their schedule? Are they a part of a team? Do they have people in their life that just aren't saying yes, but they have people who are asking harder questions? Can they get actual feedback from people and put it into practice? Like, you have to start like...
And that's all about formation. It's the whole point of this, right? Are we actively engaging in our own formation?
And it's so hard because oftentimes in that lane to do that, you will finish. You have such a higher and better chance to finish well. Without it, you could make a lot more money. You can have a lot more freedom. And it is so dangerous. It is so dangerous. I've seen it up close too many times. It's just so dangerous. And I think just recognizing what is the formation required. Because to be honest, I want to reach as many people for Christ as possible because I love Jesus. But I don't have to be the only one that reaches them.
Yeah.
I want to see the other churches in my community win. I want to see the other teaching pastors be raised up and have opportunities. I don't have to be on stage, but it is wild. People will come and tell me, why don't you just put yourself on video? I don't want to. I'd rather be a place that raises up teachers. Yeah, but don't you think it'd be, no, I just want to raise up other teachers. And I think in other people's mind is, if you have someone that you can hand the ball off to 30 times and they're going to get 120 yards, just keep doing that.
Give him the rock.
And yet with running backs, they're done at the age of 30.
That's right.
And
that's the finish line.
And preachers, there is a finish line with that kind of mentality, and very few can make it. So
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Candidly, I mean, and you talk about whatever you feel comfortable with, but you've written your last two books in so many ways deal with this from two different ways. Thing Beneath the Thing really deals with the sort of, hey, what is this underneath the waterline? Why do I do the things that I do? What is this thing that is beneath the thing, right? The thing. And then your most recent book, Grieve, Breathe, Receive, you walk through some of your journey because you've watched up close, right? And here's the thing, you and I've been working together for a long time. It's not that you just have experienced personally. I've been in the room when you get phone calls from churches, and when they're in crisis, typically they're calling Steve Carter going, hey, we got a problem here. What are we supposed to do? I wonder, like, as you've written the book and you've thought deeply about finishing well and that failure when you have a premature ending to ministry, what's some of the biggest learnings that you've seen? And maybe it's personal or you wrote about it.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple just off the top of my head. First is this. People often ask me, why do you still love the church? And my answer right away is, the church never hurt me. 5 people did. So they represent the church.
Right.
But Christ didn't hurt me. God didn't hurt me. The church didn't hurt me. It was 5 people. And my job is to work on forgiving them and hoping for a day and praying for a day of reconciliation. So that's number one. Any of you who have walked through what we would say is church hurt, I would just say, name the people who actually hurt you, and it's people hurt.
I want to sit for that. That's really important. That's really, really important, because we know that hurt happens. Lots of people are hurt. They come through our doors. We
all the time.
I probably have at least one conversation a week with someone who will say, church hurt. I had one last night, just last night, where they talked deeply. They're like, I have not been back to a church since 2019. And that's because of, and the phrase used, church hurt. I think that is really important to delineate the two, that people hurt us, and that has a different connection than the big C, broader church. So that's huge.
Second piece I would say to that too is, there are people in the world who are speaking up on the regular about the discrepancies or the dissonance that they're seeing in the church. Some of it's good. Some of it, I would say, is a little bit ambulance chasing. What we need in this time is to recognize with profound levels of discernment, where am I complicit as a congregant? And I love that example, because when I left Willow, I remember I was kind of walking through some of this, my whole kind of history of church work, and I was talking with a trauma therapist, and I'll never forget this trauma therapist said to me, Steve, first and foremost, I want to let you know you're a victim, but that's not the most interesting piece about what you shared with me. The most interesting thing to me is this. Why are you drawn to narcissists? And I said, what? Oh. And she said, because if you don't deal with that, you're going to find yourself in that situation again.
It's going to repeat itself.
And what is it? Is it the certainty? Is it the control? Is it feel like you're winning? Is it bigger? Is it better? What? And I had to recognize, I'm complicit in this, because I got a lot from being in those rooms. I got a lot from being on that stage. And I got a lot for actually not saying anything if I chose not to say something. And so I think you just have to look at this and go, all right, is this a pursuit of a person named Jesus or a person who's connected to an institution that I'm really, really proud of, like I am the quarterback of the University of Michigan? And I think that's the unfortunate piece. And then all of a sudden when it doesn't work out, you're like, that was my person. And deep down, that's a counterfeit God in Tim Keller language.
Yeah.
It is only about the
100%.
person of Jesus. So church didn't hurt me. Where am I complicit? And then the other piece I would say is this: just be careful, because we're living in a time right now when Ananias baptized Saul. It took him 3+ years before he went back to Jerusalem. We are rushing people to stages. And I think that, I've nothing. I never met Kanye West, but there are a lot of people who rushed him to a stage. And now I don't know if those same people who rushed him to a stage are with him right now.
And that means they're just as complicit. Right?
Yeah.
And we do the same things,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Because I think at some level, we want these stars. We
want these
want
stars.
somebody to admire and look up to, but God keeps saying, you were never supposed to be looking up to another human as your star.
Yes. And I think
That's
that
interesting.
that piece of looking at it from also recognizing, when my 20s, I thought bigger was better. In my 40s, I think safe and consistent is the coolest thing ever. Because that makes an organization worthy of trust to me. And I like the longevity. I like the liturgy. I like recognizing that there's a team. I like seeing that there are structures in place, or that people are willing to have difficult conversations. I've started to see that kind of structure breeds a better kind of freedom, and gives me and hopefully all of our staff the best chance to finish well.
I think it's brilliant. I think you hit on a few things, that whether you're a Christian leader or you're someone serving in a church, or maybe just attending a church, that we have to think about. And at the end of the day, you said this, every system can be gamified. And the truth is, I think as a generation, you and I, we're all beginning to be the people that mentored us. In other words, right? Like, I remember looking back, and I remember the first time that I met John Ortberg, and I was probably 28, and I had read his book, The Life You've Always Wanted. And the deep tendency within me to want to make him a rock star. I was in awe of like this guy who lived in Rockford, Illinois. I mean, he came from Rockford, Illinois, went to East High School. I was a youth pastor in Rockford, Illinois. There is something in us that recognizes a gift and then wants to put it in a particular place. And I don't want to demonize the gift. I mean, there are people who are gifted writers and communicators. I mean, they're sitting at this table, and it isn't the gift. It is, we as mentors now have a responsibility to teach a next generation, not only how to steward that gift, but how to steward their life, right? Like, what does it mean? Yeah, it's great. You have a gift that could propel our church into a particular space, but I actually love you enough to slow this thing down and to teach you what it really means to be in this space.
I keep thinking there's a difference between appreciation and adoration.
Yes,
for sure.
Right?
Yes.
So it's okay to appreciate a gift, but we so easily go to adoration, which actually isn't fair to the other person or ourselves.
Right.
Like, we really set it up for failure. So how do we stay in a place of appreciating, but not let it slip into that, Like, we so much want the hero.
Yeah.
Like, how do we guard against that? And how do we teach that as leaders? How do we teach that? Like, it's okay to appreciate it, but let's not use pedestals. They're just not good.
Well, I mean, this is why I look back. Steve and I, we were both mentored by someone I think is probably the humblest presence that has walked the planet in the last 50 years in Dallas Willard, right? And Dallas was a consistent presence of modeling like the way of Jesus, right? If there was ever someone who could take a shortcut, that could leverage his platform for his own gain. And I remember I was really, really young at the time. We were working on this formation project, and we were pouring a lot of time and energy in this project. And we had filmed a bunch of stuff with Dallas. It's one of the coolest moments ever. It was Dallas and his wife and John Ortberg, and it's a conversation at a cafe in Palo Alto. So I was behind the camera, and I mean, I wasn't filming. I was sort of, if what you call what I do, directing. But I went to Dallas after we were done, and I'm like, hey, so we're going to take a lot of this content, and we would really love to write it out and insert it in some of our guides. Can we get you to sign off on allowing us to use it? Of course, as only Dallas could. He sat there for a minute. He's like, Brother Eric, you may use anything I've ever said. There's no signature needed. It's all yours. And so I think there was always, when you watch someone choose to live out these principles and practices, what you're talking about, structures are one thing. And I'm not suggesting we shouldn't build structures in the churches that will help our pastors be less isolated, again, I don't want to take the responsibility off the perpetrator or the person who failed. They made mistakes. Regardless of the system, they made choices. But there is something to modeling consistently to a generation a different way, right? When we talk about discipleship and what it looked like in the first century, I think that is what we've been trying to get after. Yeah. That so affected me, watching someone live it out. Just in the same way watching someone crash and burn affects you. Yeah. You watch it.
And I keep going back to the same thing. We can only model externally what is true of us internally.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, there's just no way. I mean, we can try, but it doesn't last, right? Sooner or later, what's on the inside comes out. So we can only model that to the extent that we have done that work internally. And that requires ruthless attack of our self-deceptions.
That's a good phrase.
A willingness to daily reckon with who we really are at a level of honesty that we just don't find very often. Yeah, I mean, we could go on and on, but that, like, all of these things, it's like it keeps coming back to, man, I have to do the work. There's no shortcut of that. And what does that look like?
Michele, going back to your Saul example, you had both Saul and the community. And so I think in one sense, what you're saying is so spot on. We have to ruthlessly attack those areas of self-deception. But I also think about this other side for the culture and the community of the larger church. A number of years ago, I got the privilege to go to the Vatican and meet with Pope Francis. The night before, we meet with his social media guy, which is hilarious, who ended up being a historian of Catholicism. So we're having dinner, and he's like, any questions about Catholicism? And nobody's really asking a question. So I just raised my hand and go, hey, you've had some really good popes, and you've had some really bad ones. How do you make sense of that? Like Pope Borgia, who had kids and bought the role and killed people. Like, how do you tell your story? I'll never forget this. He said something so profound. He said, you were right. We've had some really good Christ examples in our popes, and we've had a lot that aren't. But every time we have not had a good pope, it it has been a picture that we have drifted from the proper center of our faith, which we responded with creating a new order. So the Jesuit order came in response to Borgia. The Benedictine order came in response, like everything came into response. So I think you are right in the individual. We have our responsibility. I also think
But
this
there
is
needs
a
to be
time,
some new orders.
new order right now
Wow.
for how we understand
Really good word.
the character and the culture of the bride of Christ.
Wow.
And I think that
and the calling of the individual
Yes.
leaders within that.
Wow.
And I think if we could get those two working and humming, I think we give ourselves the best chance to see 33% get over 55%.
Maybe we can get
you know?
55.
Yeah.
I will say, I love that new order. Steve and I are part of a community who, from the very beginning of every meeting, the whole goal is to finish well. Pastors from there is an order, there is a movement afoot around things like follow and formation.
Yep.
There is new orders being built of young pastors, leaders who really are gifted, saying, I want to finish well. I want to be an order of accountability. I want to be someone who genuinely honors Christ with my life, right? So that when we get to the end of this, I'm not a footnote, right? Footnote in the church's history at best. And so I do think there is like some of that, that stuff is at play. We see it. I mean, that's why we're sitting here candidly. It's like, hey, there is an order being formed around spiritual formation, a pursuit of Jesus, rethinking like, what does this whole thing that we've been a part of mean? And I'm optimistic. I'm genuinely optimistic about this next season of following Jesus in our local churches. So, man, what an awesome conversation. Thanks, man. Thanks, Steve, Michelle.
Thank you.
As always, awesome having you with us. We loved it. And grateful for the listeners. So that's going to do it for today. If something landed for you in this conversation, don't just let it sit. Take it with you. Carry it into your week. Talk about it with somebody. Let it do something in you. And if you want to go deeper, click on the link in the show notes. We'll be back soon with more. So until then, keep following up.